Hello, friends. It's me. And this is a different kind of story. I'm kind of fascinated by this. I just saw the title, and you guys know how sometimes I like to answer the ones about, like, am I a neckbeard, or why do neckbeards do this? Well, that's kind of what this is. This is from Reddit user American Grizzly 1776. This is titled, I think I know why neckbeards stereotypically like the anime/manga. Well, I'm open to hear what this person thinks, so let's find out. So the other day I was talking with my friends about anime. We all enjoy it, but we all agree that hardcore fans take it seriously like it's real life, and it kind of ruins the experience, not just for regular people, but for incoming fans who may be scared off by the amount of gatekeeping. So I was thinking to myself about this subreddit, and I noticed there's a pattern with people posting stories about their neckbeard friends who are obsessed with anime and fanfiction. I enjoy these two things myself, but I couldn't understand why it's so popular with the neckbeards. So here's my theory. Let's take a common anime everybody knows, Naruto. What's the main character like? Lonely, acts out to get attention, nobody gets him, wants to be stronger than everybody. Then we have Sasuke. I don't know if I'm pronouncing these right, I've never watched Naruto. Cool, his class likes him. A lot of people constantly talk about how great he is because he's the last, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that word, something Uchiha. I got nothing, man. And a child prodigy. Before I go any further, let's bring up the average neckbeard in high school based on the traits being exemplified on this site. Angry, obsessed with anime, bad hygiene, generally unpleasant to be around, and has a lot of contempt for regular people. Let's just say that he looks at Naruto. What's he gonna see? This character's just like me. So they latch onto the main character, who at that point in the story is a loser. But then as time goes on, everyone starts to like the main character. He proves himself. He becomes more and more of a legend. For most regular viewers, this would inspire them, but for the neckbeard, it poses a problem. He doesn't see the struggle and the pain the main character goes through. Instead, he internalized the idea that main character is like me, and eventually, he shows how much better he is than everyone. So that'll be me one day. They ignore the character development, and they latch onto the idea that eventually everyone will love me, while refusing to take steps to fix it themselves. And we've seen this plotline in multiple series. We've seen rabid neckbeards latch onto these characters saying how much they can relate. But eventually they start to resent the show because it doesn't go how they think it should. Just take Naruto losing to Sasuke the Valley in the end. Neckbeard doesn't want to see that. He wants to believe the character he relates to is unstoppable. So what does he do when he gets mad at how the show goes? He rewrites it himself. I used to love Naruto fanfiction. Now that I'm older, I recognize a lot of the issues with it. Most popular stories are stories where Naruto is super strong with almost no effort because the gods are making it up to him for a hard life. Somebody actually write that? But the plot lines are always overdone with Naruto being put in Hellraiser-like scenarios where he is tortured. And then, later in the story, they make Sasuke just as unlikable as possible. He cheats, he steals, he wants to kill everyone and everything, constantly being spoiled. Acts out when he's not the best. Basically the idea that they want their hero to be undeniably good and cool, and want the person they see as the enemy to be bad. But here's the thing. If you look at most of these fanfics, you'll notice something. They switch Naruto and Sasuke's personality. Instead of Naruto being the loudmouth, it's Sasuke. Instead of Sasuke being cool, it's Naruto. They love Sasuke for his traits, because he represents the attention they so desperately crave, to be loved by everyone for not doing anything. And Sasuke's new tool personality is Naruto's worst traits on steroids combined with insanity. They ignore all of the character development of the show in order to focus on their own revenge fantasy on this character. Why? Because they think it represents their own rage of the people around them. Whether it's the kids who picked on them in high school, the friends who abandoned them, or the teachers who tried to help but failed. Fanfiction can be fun when well written, but there'll be so many written with the attitude of, I'm pissed off at the world and this is how it should be. Now I know this sounds crazy, but have you noticed how many super strong Naruto fanfics there are where Naruto has like a harem of the hottest girls in the show? Does this represent the sexual frustration of some neckbeards because they can't get a girlfriend? Adding on to that, does it also represent the idea that some of them believing they deserve the perfect woman? After all, anime shows the most beautiful characters with the large boobies and shapely bodies, and basically they appeal to the male gaze. To the point where hardcore neckbeards may think, real women aren't as good as my waifu. So this leads them to reject the women who may actually be interested in them in favor of these perfect animated waifus. Anime is a great thing, but I believe the reason so many neckbeards can latch onto it is because they want the idea of everyone loving them without the struggle that the main character may go through. Anyway, sorry if this was a mouthful, and I'm running on pre-workout right now, but it's just something I felt like I had to get out. Well, that's a really interesting theory, actually. That's pretty fascinating. I can say that I can agree with a lot of this, because I've seen this exact kind of mentality play out with not just neckbeards and the whole anime, Naruto, whatever. I've never watched Naruto, so I'm going to take this guy's word on whatever he says these characters are like. But this does tend to play into this kind of power fantasy thing. A lot of neckbeards, especially the ones who I've read fan fiction or whatever written by neckbeards, tend to have a very large proponent of fantasy fulfillment, this wish fulfillment kind of mentality. This idea that they are in fact the ultimate hero. And I mean, everybody has those kind of, I hope I can do this, I hope I can be this great, I hope I can do whatever, whatever. Fantasy is fantasy. It's not just that it's written and put out where other people can read it. It's that it's written, put out where other people can read it, and treat it as though it is perfection. I've seen a lot of different, people, and we've talked about a few on this channel, I might add, whose mentality when it comes to writing these kind of things and being involved in media like this is this idea that they can create their own OC, which is a very, very specific representation of themselves, and that this is supposed to somehow make the world see them in a different way. If they wrote it this way, therefore it must be true. But that's not how any of that works. Personal growth takes time. It takes effort. It takes a lot of things to really go into it. Because OP mentioned workout, I guess this is kind of a good example for myself. I want to say almost 6 months to almost a year ago is when I first started seriously working out. I try to do a certain regimen every single day, and if it's possible, I try to walk at least 2 miles a day. It's difficult. It's really difficult because a lot of that isn't stuff you would normally do in your day-to-day life, so you have to make the effort to do it. But the effort is definitely showing. I am definitely noticing a difference in my own physiology, and I'm feeling a lot better, and things like that. I've mentioned this kind of stuff before. But the point is that if you want the change, you actually have to put in the effort. You have to change your mentality to the point that these things have to work. A lot of people, neckbeards, legbeards alike, whatever you want to say, don't really want to make that change. They just want the result. But that's not going to work. That's not how any of that works. You have to put forth the effort in order to get something out of it. I think the main reason that a lot of them tend to gravitate towards anime specifically is a lot of anime is written for more older audiences. Not specifically adult audiences, but older audiences. A lot of these shows that we knew as kids, whenever the whole anime boom in the West started, were really made just for kids. You had a lot of stuff like Johnny Bravo and Dexter's Lab and stuff like that, which is good, arguably great shows, but not really for your teenage crowd, And right around then would be when people around my age, a little older, a little younger, would have been reaching our teenage years. So this really doesn't fit the same aesthetic, This isn't really in the same place. But then we have the anime boom. We have all these different shows specifically like Toonami was showing. You've got let's see, I'm trying to remember a lot of the original lineup. So you have stuff like Sailor Moon, Yu Yu Hakusho, Gundam Wing, and a couple of others that I can't. Dragon Ball was in there too. But those first three, the one thing they have in common, though granted they really don't have anything else in common, but the one thing they have in common is a lot of the main characters are teenage characters, which relates to a lot of the people who are in that mentality. Now granted, this kind of mentality tends to branch off, obviously is still around, so it's not just, my specific generation. But a lot of it does have to do with the fact that a lot of anime is set in that specific area in time. You think about it a lot. You think about a lot of these, like, shonen-like anime that are a lot of teenagers. It's a lot of being a teenager and then having special powers. And a lot of Neckbeards and Legbeards are usually exposed to that kind of stuff relatively young, usually as teenagers, and tend to cling to it. And as they get older, their mentality doesn't really progress. They like this idea of being like, this kind of carefree teenager who can do whatever. But time doesn't work that way. Time demands you grow up and that you do things and that you be responsible, which is not something a lot of them want to do. You see the same kind of mentality in a bunch of different subcultures. I've seen it a lot in, like, furry subcultures, for example, where there are people who simply do not wish to be older. They have this mentality of just always wanting to be like this permanent teenager. And from few friends I know who actually do go to conventions will say, like, that's fine if you're at a convention. You can put on the costume, you can pretend to be whatever. It's fun for, like, 4 days or however long the convention is. But eventually you have to take the suit off and go back to work. Eventually you have to grow up. And a lot of these neckbeards, legbeards, and the like don't want that. That's the problem, is they have a mentality that is very focused on forever being like this carefree young person. But that's not the way the world works. That's not the way these things operate. You cannot have a society of people who simply do not want to integrate and work in any way. And that's where things start to come back at them. They expect to be, as OP put it, totally admired and loved and all this other stuff for their wonderful capabilities, but they haven't done anything to prove that these capabilities even exist. They haven't made any steps. They haven't done anything with it. And that in which causes the problem. You're not doing anything, therefore no one's going to respect you. You actually have to do something first. A lot of it is that kind of, I guess, fear of rejection or years of being awkward or things like that can cause a lot of them to not want to take the steps to get better. And sometimes, as we've seen in some of the stories that we cover on this channel, they do need help. They just need someone to be like, it's going to be okay. You just take it one step at a time and you can do it. And I honestly encourage that for every single neckbeard and legbeard who ever stumbles across a channel like this. Yeah, we make fun, yeah, we joke, but I genuinely do hope you get better. I genuinely do hope that you grow out of this toxic mentality that has plagued you, and I hope that your life does, in fact, get better. I don't want someone to be like that forever. We've seen the result of someone being a horrible neckbeard like their entire life. They turn into Chris Chan, and nobody needs to do that. It's just not good, man. So I do hope that anyone who has a problem with that gets better. And I do hope that things change for them. And I hope they get out of this, obsession with a fantasy world. It's fine if you want to have your own stories, your own fantasy world. I mean, hell, that's how some of the best books and stuff are written. If it wasn't for a need to create a fantasy world, we probably wouldn't have things like Lord of the Rings. But to be obsessed with it, to get lost in it, to make it your literal everyday, that's a little unhealthy, man. At some point, you gotta take off the suit and go back to work. This was an interesting little video. This was an interesting premise, and I kind of like these things. I like these questions where I can kind of figure out what somebody's theory is and kind of talk about it. If you guys have your own things like this, you can post them in the comments, or you can send them to my subreddit r/Moonhorse Stories, and I'll check it out. I actually do kind of like this kind of thought experiment stuff. I think it's pretty fun from time to time. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. I have a Ko-Fi, and I have a subreddit, and hey, baby, live streams are back. We have one every Saturday, so I'll see you there. I also have a Discord server, all these links, all this stuff and more below this video and every video, so Go check them out, man. I love you all so very much, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye, everybody.